Middle schoolers and cell phones. What do you do about it? What do you do about middle schoolers who don't have cell phones yet? In this episode, my friend and I sit down. We do a collaborative episode between the Hybrid Ministry Show and the Middle School Ministry Podcast with my friend and the host of that podcast, Ronald Long. We talk about cell phones, technology, but specifically with middle schoolers. We got a free resource that we collabed on and put together and a free worksheet download and both links in both of our show notes, so go check those out. What about kids without cell phones? What do we do about that? When should you give your kid a cell phone? How do you navigate that? How do you manage that? And how do you work through sort of the guardrails of cell phones and technology, and specifically cell phones in your programming in your middle school ministry or your ministry with middle schoolers. So I'm so excited to have you check out this show and this interview between myself and Ronald. And so without any further ado, welcome my friends to the Hybrid Ministry Show. What's up, everybody? I'm Nick, and this is...
Hey guys, I'm Ronald Long. How you doing?
We're excited to be here, Ronald. This is a weird thing. Like, this is your show, this is my show, this is our show.
Whose show is it really? That's a question.
That is the question that the people want to know the answer.
Did I just take over Hybrid Youth Ministry? I think I did.
You did.
Oh, great. Yeah. This is mine now.
Welcome.
And yours,
actually, yeah, and I'm taking over
middle school ministry. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Tell Andrea.
Exactly. No. Bye, Andrea. Bye. Anyway, Ronald, it's interesting, and I'm excited to have this conversation because probably one of the biggest pushbacks I get when I'm pushing stuff like in my hybrid ministry, just idea and whatnot, is what about middle schoolers? Especially like in our context, we don't get middle schoolers until we get them at 6th grade.
Yeah.
Which there's an inflection point, and depending on the conservative nature of your church, there could be a lot of those students that have cell phones.
Yep.
And then a lot of students that don't, and so like my main thing with hybrid ministry is trying to intersect people where they are. Yeah. And I think the cell phone is just a great spot to try and aim for, right? But what about those middle schoolers that are young and like don't have cell phones? And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you because you, as a lifelong middle school youth pastor and the host of a podcast, and a dad of daughters in that age range, right? Like, I want to hear your perspective because it feels to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like middle schoolers kind of run the gamut. Some that don't even have access to any technology, and then some that are just all in way too much. You're a little scared for their well-being, Absolutely.
And you're right, because their parents also run the gambit too. So, for people listening who don't know, I have in my house 4 teenage daughters, right? I have 18-year-old senior graduating this year. Then I have a freshman, a 7th grader, and a 5th grader.
Yeah, you're right there.
Right? So I've got everybody. And my elementary school kid who's in 5th grade, Ruth, is telling me about her friends who have cell phones and have had cell phones since 3rd and 4th grade. That's just been their reality. They have always had a phone. Think of the iPad kid who just parents are yeah, whatever, here, right? Here's just the next step up. Go ahead and have a phone. Don't care. Put whatever on it. And then me and my family, this has become our rule. It was our rule with our first. You get your cell phone at the end of 5th grade.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit more about this too, because I have really appreciated what other parents told me and helped me figure out. That cell phone only can do a couple things, right? And we stair step eventually through it.
So as we lean into this, first of all, everyone should know, no matter where you're listening, hit the link down below, because Ronald and I put together kind of a collaborative hybrid ministry for middle schoolers kind of resource. So take it, download it, use it, share it with your parents, whatever you want to do. Yeah. But especially here we are post-Christmas, and isn't it so true that most middle schoolers, there's a lot of technology that's given under the tree. And so this is just a very timely conversation, right? Let's talk about technology use and middle schoolers. So give us, why don't you start there where you did a little bit, dive a little deeper into that 5th grader that's your rule. Is that your recommendation? Do you take it? Would you recommend parents take that on more of a case by case type basis? What's the wisdom principle in that, or is it hard and fast? Like, yeah, as soon as they're done with 5th grade, they're mature enough to have a cell phone, or like, how do you make that decision? I guess, or how would you coach parents to make that decision?
So what we went through, and what was kind of like the deciding factor for us, is I live in San Antonio, and so we have once my kid was finished with elementary school, our oldest, she had friends who were splitting up into like the 4 winds, right? And we wanted to give her a way to stay connected to them.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, we're going to give you a phone, but big stipulations. We had it's an iPhone, so we locked it down pretty tight to where she couldn't download any apps without requesting permission. So that's a big deal. There's no browser on it. So in fact, my high schooler just got a browser this year for 9th grade.
Okay. So that's like all of middle school. Yeah.
Yeah. No browser. And specifically also no social media. She also just got her first social media, which was Pinterest.
Okay.
So
which does that even count? Like that's
one
of those
man.
Fringe ones.
That's a stair step. Here's what I tell parents, and here's what I have told parents, and what I am taking through. Imagine a cell phone like a car, right? You are even for the visual. You're giving keys away to your kid. Oh, for the audio too. Hold on. There we go.
Those are car keys, people.
Little
Ronald
Foley.
Jingling them. We'll narrate this.
Little Foley for our audio listeners. There's you don't just give the Ferrari away to a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old and say, all right, go figure that out. I guess you know more about this than I do. Like, no. Like, you start that kid backing in and out of your driveway in the beater, right?
Yeah.
And so we took that principle and applied it to our kids having cell phones. We're like, okay, you're going to get like a not great iPhone. It's not the brand new one. It's going to be like the one with the one camera. Yeah, the one camera type deal. And we're going to stair step you through this.
Screens like my
well,
Android
that's
here.
Just an Android, Nick. That's
the glass is apparently weaker.
It's fine. No, and so we've stair stepped. And so my 7th grader who has a phone, also has a phone in middle school, has a phone, but doesn't have, again, social media, doesn't have a browser. And we also put like a stipulation on where the phone can go. My girls, I live in a 2-story house. All the bedrooms are upstairs. No phones upstairs. Like that's a rule for us. And so
great rule, by the way. I approve.
When they when it's time to go to bed, the charger's downstairs. Yeah. And they have to charge their phone downstairs. No phones at the dinner table. In fact, even it's no phones after dinner. So we say, hey, get it done. After dinner, no phones.
Good.
Those are just like things that we have done as a family to be like, hey, here's the deal. We are going to give you permission that expands with responsibility.
Yeah.
And then also, cool thing as a parent, my kids don't have a cell phone after supper. So if I'm just scrolling on my cell phone after supper,
they're calling you out.
They're like, hey, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need to be off my phone. Smart. I need to pay attention to you.
That's just like built-in accountability. Right there.
It's huge.
For sure. Yeah, and the thing that I try and tell parents as well in our context and other youth ministry avenues and whatever is honestly just like a lot of times the question is what product or what resource do you use to like monitor like your kids' screen usage and all those types of things. And rest assured, there are a million different like resources and things out there that you can use and you can lean into.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, the goal is for that thing not to become your kid's parent. The goal is for you to be the parent of it, right? And so I love your rules because those guidelines are things that you've put in place. Like you can lock down an iPhone all you want, but you can still abuse it if it's in the room and they're on it until way after bedtime, or the no phones after dinner thing. Like there can be indiscriminate use or just like mindless use of it. And so you're being proactive and in on top of it, and that's what I really like and appreciate, because that's the tech. There's always a workaround in the technology. That's what I found.
Yeah.
Like, there's no foolproof piece of technology. There's always a workaround.
No, I figured it out when I was dealing dial-up modem internet, and my parents had the protective things when I was in high school. It was like, well, I can figure this out,
Exactly.
So no amount of blocking software or things like that will get around actual discipleship of your kids, because
for sure.
You are a person who is imperfect, just like your kids. They're gonna make mistakes. So what do you do? Like, how do you figure that out? Big deal.
That's good. Let's shift gears a little bit then. Let's talk about how you've noticed technology, cell phones, whatever, within actual confines of youth ministry. Not just you parenting your kids with it, but like, what's it like navigating? Because in a lot of cases, like we said, you got kids that don't even have it at all versus kids who are like using and fully on like all the social apps. So what was your typical practice as a middle school pastor with technology?
Yeah. My part of it was just being open about that being a potential barrier between you and other people.
Okay.
And the other thing was not, because I was in a real conservative context, there was almost like some judgment to kids who did have a phone, which was really funny.
Yeah.
And so
Same
I had to
here, by the way, so I can relate to that.
Yeah, I'm glad you get it. So on the one hand, whenever I had a parent being like, you know what, my kid just is say that they don't have any friends in youth ministry. And I'm at their kid. I so remember this one specific instance of a girl, phone here, face down, and even her hair like covered the side of her face to where all it was, and she was in a corner on her phone looking down at it and not engaging with the room. And then like I got a email 3 weeks later being like, my daughter's just not making any friends. I'm like, yeah, no joke. I've tried.
Yeah.
And so trying to have a conversation with students where it's both not being judgmental, but also making sure they're aware of like, hey guys, if you feel lonely, one of the reasons, in a list might be you're on your phone too much and you're missing what's going on right in front of you, right? You care more about your online persona or the next funny video than you do your friend who's literally sitting 3 feet away from you. And so trying to navigate that well was always the thing. And so that would just be like application. But on the other hand, you can do that in really great ways to be like, hey guys, if you've got a phone, text a friend a verse right now. Someone who's not in this room, text an encouraging verse so that you can be a light in their life, right? It's both and, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like telling a kid, hey, cell phones are the devil.
Right.
You should never have one. And I don't like telling parents, just give your kid a phone and don't worry about it, because it's absolutely both and.
Well, and that's exactly like what I feel like my entire podcast is predicated on. Like what this started out of, I don't know, I guess like a moment of frustration and a little bit of like an inflection point. It was like we'd gone pretty hard in on like digital ministry during COVID.
Yeah.
I was working in Chicago, and so it was necessitated, like it had to happen. But then we found some really fun and cool wins out of doing ministry in a digital sort of context, and some opportunities that actually opened up for us that weren't available to us doing ministry pre-COVID. And so as we were all sort of coming back from, restrictions and lockdown and all those types of things, we were then trying to navigate this like tension between like how much should we swing the pendulum, right?
Yeah.
And so my whole thing, like the whole name of this like hybrid ministry is like, it's not just your digital, but it's not just your in-person. It's kind of that both and I think in all of life, it's easier for us. We like to draw hard and fast lines and be like, cell phones are bad, so you should not. But I like your Ferrari example, because you have to work up to it. You don't just earn it immediately. And so like my contention is, as much as we, especially older generations, want to lament cell phones and how difficult they are for ministry and connection, and they are, like in some cases they definitely are, but like there's also a lot of good. that comes out of them. Text your friend a verse, or group chats. Like group chats are such a simple thing that didn't exist, what was it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Like, even if you have people with Androids, like group chats are still a way to stay connected.
No, you can't connect with people with Androids over group chat. It doesn't happen.
But, so like that's kind of like my contention is like we have to help students navigate this well and not just settle for the like easy answer of like just throw your cell phone in a river. Like it's terrible and it's the enemy. And if we think that, like, then why are we getting our kids these things for Christmas? So I just need to call them at practice. Like, okay, but now you've opened Pandora's box, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not condemning any parent for doing that. I'm just saying, like, now we have to help them navigate that well, both at the parent level and also while we're like navigating and managing that within like our student ministries.
Sure, and it's just as important as like showing your kid what YouVersion can do, and be like, hey, what's really cool about YouVersion? It's a Bible reading plan. Let's you and me do it together, parent and kid. Or, hey, as a ministry, we're going to do this month-long Bible reading plan that's on your phone. It's absolutely being able to use the tools that are available to us, because we could have said the same thing about like lamenting the invention of the car taking away our, oh man, we're not as connected as, So, yeah, and since this is the middle school ministry podcast too, it matters to a middle school student what you model to them, because they take that to heart, and so my whole thing was not trying to like I said, judge those who had a cell phone, but absolutely, if they're going to be on YouTube watching, Mr. Beast do whatever Mr. Beast does, then I kind of also want them to hear from their youth pastor every now and then.
Why not? Yeah, exactly.
And so that's an easy thing to do, like youth pastor, to take your phone, spend 5 minutes making 5 reels or 5 shorts for YouTube, and be like, hey, look, my kids are going to get some encouragement from me this week. That's out there. I absolutely. And one thing I've noticed, and I've seen in like studies and stuff here recently, is like, Gen X, boomers even have all sort of like settled in on Facebook. Millennials, are you a millennial, Ronald? Yes, and how dare you?
All right, me too. Instagram, right? It's kind of like millennials' favorite platform. Gen Z sort of like made TikTok its thing. We're noticing Gen Alpha's making YouTube kind of their spot.
It is YouTube.
And I even read that for Gen Alpha, it's taking the place of Google as its preferred search engine.
Absolutely.
And so what an opportunity for us, like, to be on there, and for middle school kids to see us, to see their youth pastor, to maybe even see themselves or their friends from youth group. If you post shorts, reels, and all that type of stuff on there, like, you're so right. Like, it's such a fantastic opportunity, and it just exactly what my whole goal with Hybrid is, like, showing up where they are. Like, if they're on YouTube, how cool is it that, like, they can get on there and they can watch Mr. Beast, who's all across the country, and also their church.
Well, and to even use the platform like it's currently being used, then how cool would it be if your kid typed in how to study the Bible and they got an answer from their youth pastor immediately? Like, you already had a 5-minute video on like how to study the Bible that you had prepared for your kids. It was there, right? Because that's how they're using the platform.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not just there for you as a youth pastor to have another channel for announcements, though you can be, but what I encourage people to do is use the platforms for their intended uses. And so if you're going to use it for a thing that you think is what your ministry needs, but it's not in alignment with the intended use of the platform, you're not going to see the same types of results than if you actually use it for what it's being used for, which is answering specific questions and, frankly, entertainment, right? And maybe like a little bit of inspiration too. So that's good. So what would you say to a middle school youth pastor or any youth pastor out there, like, who's got people in their church like you and like me, who are a little leery about cell phone usage, middle school? Like, how would you coach them, to either lean in and have that conversation, or with parents, or how to like manage maybe some of that potential like turbulent waters of, angry parents who think cell phones are evil and of the devil?
You know what's funny is when I first started in ministry, like there was a big deal where we said, "Hey, don't bring any cell phones to camp," right? And then there was a really turbulent season in between when we arrived to my kid as a parent saying, my kid will bring their phone to camp or they're not going.
Oh yeah.
And so navigating that in between, I think there are far fewer parents who are going to say that a cell phone is evil.
Yeah.
They might be saying, my kid has to have one because I need to be connected and know what's up with my kid at all times.
Yeah.
Which is a different type of unhealth, but that's fine. We can go from there. To help a youth pastor navigate the cell phones are bad, right?
Yeah.
You know, a cell phone is the same, to use the car analogy. It's a tool. It can take you someplace great. It can take you someplace awful.
Yeah.
And if you want to be the youth pastor who's like, no cell phones in the youth room, they go in this box over here and we use paper Bibles still, like that's fine if you explain that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as you're saying why we do this as a ministry, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Do that, but you're going to have parents who, like, when you go to camp, when you go to retreat, they're going to push back on you and be like, hey, my kid is going to take their cell phone. I don't care what the rules are.
Yeah. Well, and like, when did you get a cell phone? Like, how old were you when you got?
I was 16. And I was 16. I got a cell phone because my parents were afraid that I was going to get lost when I started driving by myself. So I got my dad's secretary's old Nokia phone.
So you're 16, right? And now you're the type of parent in that particular age bracket and demographic. You're sending your daughters, kids to camp. So like, that's all, cell phones from the age of 16 for you and on up. Like, I was about the same, so here in a couple of years when my kids are old enough to go to camp, like that's my like comfort zone, and so like, I get there's scary stuff on it, but it's also you're not never gonna give your kid a cell phone. So how do we, and that's my thing, how do we help lean in and teach them the good things of it? Put good rules and guidelines and guardrails all around it so that you're hopefully protecting your kids and having conversations, with it.
It's exactly that. It's continued conversations with kids.
Yeah.
And even as a parent, being okay to say, hey, these are our non-cell phone times to where we're gonna like talk, and that's I know parents who like to say no phones in the car. Yeah. Because that 15-minute, 20-minute drive can be like, hey, we can actually like have a conversation as we drive around.
Yeah, so true.
But just having conversations about your phone usage. Hey, who are you following? Hey, or even telling, like, I will do this with my girls. I'll send them goofy videos and goofy memes, not because I think they're the funniest thing in the world, but I'm trying to connect with them on their level, like to my own kids.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, like, it's funny because they don't have social media. What I'm doing is screen recording a funny reel I saw and then sending it to them as a message.
Bro, that's so committed, but I love it. Like, that's, you're like, we're not doing the social media thing, but I still want you to see this thing that I saw on social media, and it's funny. So you like it.
And I want you to know that I'm thinking of you throughout the day. I want you to laugh. This is a funny thing, and phones aren't the devil.
And that's good, man.
Yeah, so it's trying to continually have a conversation with your kid, and even where you're saying, hopefully they're coming to you and being like, my friend is being dumb in the group chat. Like, okay, what did they say? Talking through what's good to text, what's not good to text, how inflection matters, and being like, hey, I know you hate it, but this might be a FaceTime moment because it sounds like you guys are not seeing each other, texting back and forth. Maybe you need to like actually talk.
Yeah, man, that's so good. Well, hey, anything else, Ronald, before we hang this sucker up?
I think the most important thing a parent can do with their kid and having a phone is have some guidelines and have lots of conversations. I think if you stick into those two places, like, you're gonna be in a spot where maybe sometimes it's uncomfortable, maybe it's sometimes you're giving a little bit more, you're giving more unearned responsibility away than you're ready for, but that's parenting as a whole. You don't want your 18-year-old kid to get a cell phone and all social media all at once and be like, well, now I'm gonna learn everything. I think it's a much better experience for you and the kid if you walk them through the process together, with you in the driver's seat sometimes and them in the driver's seat sometimes.
That's good. Yeah, actually, if anyone's listening to this, watching this, like here live, like in the next several weeks, like that's what I'm doing on my podcast, is I'm doing like some parent and kid kind of like tech talks. And so they're like aimed for youth pastors to like curate or have that conversation with like some downloadable worksheets and stuff like that they can share. Because I think that's the key in all of this. Like it's easier to draw a line in the sand and be like, no, this, like this is it. We're not doing that. But like the phone has not allowed us to do that. It's not going away. So instead we got to figure out how do we lean into it, into what's uncomfortable and maybe like uncertain waters, but like lean into it to just open up that continued kind of conversation thing. So
absolutely.
I think that's so good. So if you're listening here for me on my channel, go follow everything Ronald's doing, Middle School Ministry Podcast. It's dope. It's all about middle schoolers. And
I just want to thank everybody for listening to my podcast, the Hybrid Ministry Podcast. Thank you so much. That's really great.
Taken over.
No, and if you're listening to this from Middle School Ministry Podcast, you should definitely go check out what Nick Clason's doing over in Hybrid Ministry. Some really good stuff, some really helpful things to carry the conversation forward when it comes to the digital world and youth ministry. Yeah, no, I love it. So good. And like I said, we both collabed on a little resource. It's free in both of our show notes, so go grab that. And that's it, man. We'll talk to you guys next time. See you around.